Once the community assembled in the Carmelite convent in Aix-en-Provence, it was not long before they launched out on missions in the surrounding parishes. Their first mission was here in Grand on February 11, 1816. At the time, 1,800 people lived in this town. Eugene's cousin, Rose Johannes, was mayor of Grand, and their 5-week mission was a great success. Eugene and his men visited every family in the town. Their next mission was in Fouvaux, followed by Marignane.
For the first missions, the missionaries, he and his companions, had to walk there. Now sometimes this could be 15 or 20 kilometers, but they did. They walked to wherever they had to give the mission on principle. They could have taken like a horse and wagon or chariot, but no, they walked. They arranged to be met at the entrance to the village by the parish priest, and they would proceed in procession with a cross into the church, and there they would open the mission. And then throughout the week they would have preaching, confessions. Some missions took 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, as much as 6 weeks. But they kept at it until they were satisfied that they had done all they could, and then they moved on to the next battle.
It was customary to erect a mission cross at the end of the mission as a reminder to the parishioners, and many of these crosses still exist today. Simple small iron crosses, as in Grand and Marignane, or more elaborate monumental structures, as in Barjol. Reconciliation was the theme of the missions. Reconciliation with God in the sacrament of confession, but also reconciliation in society after the horrors committed during the Revolution. A conciliation tribunal was established in the course of the mission. The success of this created its own problems. Not all the clergy shared Eugene's broad-minded approach to reconciliation, and perhaps jealousy played a part.
In 1823, some of the bishops said, "We want our men to come back," the diocesan priests. And they said, "No, but we've made vows." And the bishop said, "But who approved your vows? Did Rome approve your vows? Did the bishop approve your vows? No, they're private vows. They have no value whatsoever." And now the other bishops around said, "Hey, if that's true, then we want all our men to come back." So Eugene was faced almost with a congregation that was going to collapse.
To strengthen the group's position, the idea was formed of setting up the group more formally as a society. Eugene's companions packed him off to the de Masnad family manor house in Saint-Laurent de Verdun. There he wrote a rule for the missionaries of St. Charles, the name adopted in honor of St. Charles Borromeo, who had long been the special patron of the de Masnad family. Then another providential event happened. Eugene was offered the opportunity of establishing a second community here in the Diocese of Gap, when Bishop Miolis invited him to take over the shrine to Our Lady within his diocese. This shrine, Notre-Dame de l'Eau, Our Lady of the Lake. It would provide Eugene with a second base of operation, just in case it became impossible for his little band of missionaries to continue within the Diocese of Aix. The parish missions continued to flourish, but so did the opposition of some elements of the clergy. Eugene's companions were convinced that there was only one way to ensure the future of the little band of missionaries. They must have the approval from the Pope, and so become one of the Church's religious congregations.
Father Albini, that humble, unassuming and timid man, was the one who shook me out of my indecision. He literally grabbed me by the shoulders, and I can still hear his voice in my ears. "You will have to go to Rome."
It was now November 1825. Eugene spent 5 months in Rome, going from office to office, meeting cardinals, archbishops and secretaries, visiting churches and monuments in his spare time.
It's amazing how he managed to pass the time and how much he managed to do. And his diary is so detailed that he keeps an account almost day by day of the money he spent. And we know that he spent 2 whatever it was francs on a cup of coffee and he bought paper today and he bought something else the following day. We have all that detailed, everything he did, and he brought back that account and he presented it to Tempier for his approval.
When he finally got an audience with Pope Leo XII, he had his petition well prepared. When the final approval took place on February 17, 1826, the name of the society had changed once again. The title was now the Missionary Oblates of the Most Holy and Immaculate Virgin Mary, the Oblates of Mary Immaculate.
It was the Church who gave us that name. Men consecrated to God under the name of Mary, and we receive it with respect, love, and gratitude. Why? It is a passport to heaven.
Eugene returned home to Aix. However, it was not long before events forced him to move his home from Aix to Marseille, where he became Vicar General to his uncle Fortuné, the Bishop of Marseille. Marseille is France's great commercial port. The diocese is one of the oldest Christian dioceses in the world, with legendary connections with Lazarus and Mary Magdalene. He had been pressured into taking the position because his uncle, in his own words, an exceedingly old man, needed the help of a trustworthy younger man to do battle with the government. The government, in its efforts to blot out Christian tradition, now threatened the diocese with extinction. So Eugene sat at his desk as Vicar General and lived in the Bishop's Palace, today Marseille's police headquarters. As it turned out, Eugene, called to preach the kingdom and reconcile his people with God, would sit here at a desk for some 40 years. Here at this desk he was to write many of his 6,000 letters to oblates and other correspondents all over the world. At first, the desk stifled him. It was a threat to his spiritual life. It kept him away from the oblate community, from the regular prayer he loved. It kept him away from the work he most wanted, the missions. It swallowed up greedily all his time. He came to understand that it was his cross. In 1832, Eugene left his desk to go to Rome to be ordained as a bishop. He was to become, in effect, the auxiliary bishop of Marseille. In this way, Bishop Fortuné hoped to outwit the government and have a man ready to take his place when he died. Otherwise, the government would block the appointment of a successor and eventually have the diocese suppressed. His episcopal ordination on October 14, 1832, was a real encounter with the Holy Spirit. He wrote that, "I feel renewed and in a spiritual state I cannot put into words." He would need all the spiritual strength he could get, for the government in France could not get it out of its head that Eugene was an aristocrat by birth and suspected him of plotting against it.
1830, there was a revolution in July. Louis-Philippe took over, and he tried to bring back many of the values of the revolution that he thought were being lost. And one of them was attacking the church, so we weren't allowed to preach missions anymore for a number of years. And Eugene is now being hammered left, right, and center for all this. 1832, they make him Bishop of Nicosia to try and save the Diocese of Marseille, which the king wants to close. Eugene himself now loses his French citizenship. He has to stop being Vicar General. He's persecuted by the government. And all this obviously reflected, if the leader was being bombarded, the congregation itself was being bombarded, and grew very, very slowly.
However, governments come and governments go. The suspicions about Eugene were dispelled, and eventually Eugene became Bishop of Marseille in succession to his uncle. The diocese was now saved, and Eugene, now spiritually mature and immensely experienced in the life of the church, spent more than 20 years in the hard work of building up his diocese. The bishop's palace was now his. He had his rooms and office on the ground floor to be more accessible to the people. It was only during the last years of his life that he moved upstairs. During the time he was in charge of the diocese, 38 new parishes were set up, about one every year, each with its parish church. His cathedral was this old tumble-down building beside the bishop's palace. Eugene wished to build a new cathedral at the heart of the city, but the government decreed that it must be built beside the old cathedral. Sadly, Eugene never saw the new cathedral completed. This beautiful Byzantine cathedral, located by the sea, is sadly underused today and outside of the mainstream of the city's life. Here we find Eugene's tomb, located now in a side chapel. Eugene also built this great church of Notre Dame de la Garde. It stands high above the city, and the statue of Mary looks out over the sea. Church building was not Eugene's priority, though. It was people he was most interested in, especially the poor. He worked hard to give them adequate services. Religious orders and associations were brought in, each with its own charism. Institutions were set up, and as the city prospered in the 19th century, it also expanded and boasted of its modern spirit. This was reflected in the new railway station. It fell to Eugene to solemnly bless it and give it the name of St. Charles. He also blessed the great new waterworks and the column and statue of the Immaculate Virgin Mary. Being called up to perform actions like this shows us how Eugene had now become a respected figure, even in the higher echelons of government. Peace, we can say, broke out between Eugene and the government. He became the friend of King Louis-Philippe and his queen, and of his successor Louis Napoleon. He even became a member of the French Senate. And still, he found time to go out and meet and know and minister to his people. We see him climbing the inner stairways of the tall tenement buildings to administer the sacrament of confirmation and last rites to an old lady. When he comes back down, after administering the sacrament, he is beaming and brimming with joy. We see him with the fishwives. He loved to visit them in the fish market and enjoyed the lively repartee. Early in the morning, the fishing boats still arrive, and the fishwives set up their stalls here in the old port. His heart was alive. Picture him listening to a sermon when the preacher forgets what he was about to say. He jumps up and saves the situation by announcing that a procession will start immediately from the fountain outside the church. Hear the words of a witness. Like any of the ordinary faithful, the old man joined the crowd. I happened to be with a dock worker, a member of our sodality. The bishop took hold of us, both saying, "You to the port and you to the starboard." And there we were, singing hymns to Mary and roaming through the city for 2 hours. And of course, he was always the superior general of the Oblates of Mary Immaculate. Marseille was a crossroads for missionaries and missionary bishops coming from all over the world, and Eugene was their host. Among those who came here was Bishop Bourget from Montreal in 1841.
When Bishop Bourget came, we were 45 oblates, and he invited Eugene to send missionaries to Canada. This tiny congregation that wasn't working. Eugene realized that the hand of God was in this, and he sent 6 missionaries. And with that then came the explosion in the congregation. 1841, 45 oblates. 20 years later, when Eugene died, 415 oblates. So we really had exploded. So it needed that courage to do something impossible. This tiny congregation that had so many demands in France, fine, we're going to take 6 out of that group of 45 and send them away. And that then brought life.
Here is a road that leads afar, and a vast field unfolds. A gateway is wide open to us.
In that same year, 1841, in which Eugene sent oblates to Canada, He sent a man to explore the possibilities of an English mission, and others to Sri Lanka. Missions to the USA, South Africa, Scotland and Ireland were to follow. A diocese full of life, and missionaries going out all over the world. And at the heart of it all, a man of heart. A heart as big as St. Paul's. In the words of a fellow bishop, a heart as big as the world. Whatever may be the particular link with Eugene's family that draws us to him, be it as an oblate associate, a partner in mission, a volunteer, a parishioner, or an oblate priest or brother, we can be sure that his love, his heart, is there for us. St. Eugene, pray for us and keep us in your heart, and share with us your passion to be co-workers with Christ in the spreading of his kingdom.